Hey, good evening, Top fans. Bill from Top Fan Rivalry here with our final edition to the 2021 season, the World Series edition of the Top Fan Rivalry Clubhouse. I'm excited to have some of our regular guests on. Jackson and Ned, I'm sure will have something to say about the World Series. Some team won it. I don't remember who it was, but some team won it. And Jamie, our resident Dodger gal, she'll have something to say, and I'm sure Jon will have something to say. About the Angels and so we'll have that discussion at some point. So anyways, Top fans, tonight's all about the World Series. So Jackson, we're going to lead off with you. Tell us a little bit about what you saw and obviously your team won, but what did you see? Talk to us.
I saw more of the same of all postseason, just the Braves shutting down, this potent lineup, that potent lineup. I mean, the bullpen was fantastic. Matzik, Minter, and Will Smith over the course of the postseason threw like 38 innings and only allowed 7 runs, which is pretty legendary from a bullpen. Will Smith was perfect. No, he didn't give up any runs after being shaky all season. And, he blew a game last year in the NLCS. So it was good to see him out there doing what he does best. He was striking batters out. He's getting lots of ground balls. But I think that was the difference between the Braves and the Astros. It was the timely hitting and the pitching. Timely hitting, pitching, defense is what wins you games in the end. And the Braves did a better job at it. They were able to keep runners from crossing home plate. It doesn't matter how many runners you have on base. They have to score. So
been telling Jamie all postseason, pitch count and pitching. It's all about pitch count and pitching. All right. And you guys nailed it. Ned, your turn. Tell us.
Oh, being a lifelong Braves fan and growing up in Atlanta during the lean years in the early 80s and the mid 80s and even before the 90s, this was such a gratifying win as a fan. I almost was like the players. It was almost like numb. I was like, did that really just happen? But I think it was just satisfying to watch as a fan of this organization baseball is all about. Baseball is the sport in our family. Obviously, with Jackson, being a big contributor here to Top Fan, and I'm just so happy for the players that they have and the organization. It's a class organization. I think if anybody around if you're a fan of baseball and you were to look around and say, hey, that's a pretty classy organization. They've had a tremendous farm system over the last 25 years. They've got a great skipper that knows how to manage the game and manage the players, and they've got a good core on the field. Freddie Freeman's the leader, but they've got a good core of young kids, young guys that are just like could be there for a long time. Very similar to what the Astros have, what they called their core 4. So I kind of agree with Jackson with what I saw. The thing that really struck me was the Astros didn't really hit. And was that more because of the Braves pitching, or was it because the Astros just couldn't hit? It almost seemed like they were gripping the bat a little too hard. The only home runs they got were from Altuve out of the leadoff spot. Astros had 2 home runs the whole series. If you would have told me that at the beginning of the series, I said, you're crazy. But, that's what happened. In the games that Atlanta won, the pitching was fantastic. In the games that they didn't win, the Astros seemed to be a little more relaxed, and they came out and they hit, and they did beat the bullpen. And the one thing that really got me though was obviously we talked about this on the last podcast, was about the Astros not having Lance McCullers, their number 1 starter, and I knew that was going to be a problem for them. And then in Game 5, when Dusty Baker went to his Game 6 starter, which I didn't really understand, because I think the game was tight at that point, and he brought in Urquidy to pitch 1 inning. It didn't make any sense to me watching this. I'm like, all right, well, there goes the Astros' chances of winning Game 6 if they get there. I felt that it just really didn't really understand the move, and you kind of hate to see that from their side, but Jackson was right. Braves just outpitched them, they outhit them, they outplayed him on defense, and I think I kind of predicted it, that the Braves had to win 2 in Houston to win the series, which they did. They won 2 out of 3 there, and they won 2 out of 3 at home. But I think from a fan standpoint, not rooting for those teams. I hope you guys enjoyed the series because, there's a lot of good, as Jackson and I know, because we watch pretty much most every game. We've got some good upstart young players that are on the team, Albies and Riley and Dansby Swanson, and I wish Acuna was there because then the whole world could have seen him play. But, they brought in these other guys that were just dynamite, lights out. And if Alex Anthopoulos doesn't get executive of the year, I don't know what's going to happen. So it just, I think as a fan, it just was satisfying to finally get that. And, the thing I'm really looking forward to is the party tomorrow, is the parade to watch and really see how the former Dodger Jock Peterson celebrates, because he seems to be at the center of all celebrations when it comes to it. So who knows, maybe be like Mardi Gras. He'll be throwing out pearls to the people on the parade route and stuff like that. So, yeah. Anyway, I think it's just fun. And, I tech my brother's a big Braves fan too. And, back in 95 when they won it, he said, "Oh, this is the best team I've ever seen." And I texted him after they won this game. It's like, no, this team's a lot better, And Henry, my other son, was giving me some stats tonight that he found out. They won 44 games before the All-Star break, 44 games after the All-Star break, including the postseason. And guess how many runs were scored in the World Series total? 44. So if you don't think that's karma, or Henry Aaron had something to do with that, then you're not a baseball fan. So it just, for me, it was really something kind of satisfying to see. And there is some bragging rights now going on up there with guys like Phil Niekro and Hank Aaron. They're all slapping each other a high five, and Don Sutton, all those guys that were big with the organization. It's just happy to see. So, we're happy. So now when we go into the visitors ballparks, like we like to do, we like to go see the Braves when they come to the West Coast, San Diego, LA, and Arizona. We can walk around the stadium now with a little bit more pride to say, yeah, we're world champions. So,
yes.
Right, Jackson?
By the way, Ned, that numb feeling doesn't go away for about 3 weeks. And then you go buy a hat like this that says champs on it in your team, and because it's going to be a while, you might want to buy one for John too. It might be a while for the Angels, but that numb feeling doesn't go away.
Next time there's a 60-game season, the Angels are going to win it for sure.
Wow, that's a good one.
So maybe next year with the impending strike is what I'm hearing.
That's harsh. That's harsh.
The strike thing. Ooh, we'll talk about that on another thing. But yeah, so Ned, that feeling doesn't go away. We're gonna come back.
If there was a 60-game season, Mets would have been in the playoffs. Probably would have won on all this year.
Who knows? Who knows? Jamie, World Series. We're gonna come to John in a second.
So being a Dodgers fan, I was pretty upset that the Dodgers weren't in the World Series. However, if the Dodgers weren't going to be in the World Series, I was very, very happy to root on the Braves. And I was extremely happy and even more proud to be rooting for the Braves when I noticed that Sandoval was like traded. So that made me extremely happy. So it made it easier because I can't stand that guy. And I think with all the games that happened, with everything, I just had this feeling that Braves weren't going to win in Atlanta, and that's just really sad because with the All-Star game being taken away from them, from Atlanta at least, it would have been very appropriate for the World Series to be won there. It just kind of would have been just like a little jab. But honestly, it's also great to just kind of rub salt in the wounds of Houston, winning on their field and being like, yeah, this is what you get when you don't cheat, kind of thing. So just my 2 cents.
Rough crowd. Awesome. John, what were your thoughts about the World Series?
I thought that throughout the playoffs, including the Dodger series, when the Braves played them, they just out-patience everybody. Like
Good
they
call.
did not panic. I felt like every team they played panicked in inopportune times. Like there is like you guys probably already talked about this, but the Dodgers panicked in game 2. They panicked while trying to send out starters when in positions where they're not supposed to be. They just panicked, and they panicked themselves out of the playoffs. And then Houston did the same thing, that was already touched on, but they didn't need, even in game 6, they didn't need to throw Garcia on 3 days rest. They did not need to throw him. They had Jake Odorizzi fresh, who's not that much of a worse pitcher, right? He could give you some good innings there. You could have brought in Garcia maybe for an inning in the middle. I just felt like they just were panicking, and the Braves were patient. Like game 5, they just were like, we lost. We're just going to throw our lefty out here for like 5 innings or whatever he pitched, 4 innings. He's just going to keep throwing curveballs. They're going to keep hitting jacks, and we don't care. Like they're, they didn't hit jacks, but they just kept hitting gappers, and like, we're going to burn this guy, and they're going to beat us like 9-3 or whatever. But that set up the pitching for the rest of the last 2 games. Like the Braves were set. There was no way they were going to lose both of those games with their pitching. They had their ace going in game 6. They had their second best pitcher going in game 7. Their whole relief was set up, and they did not panic. They were like, fine, you guys can have this one, and we'll win game 6. And they did, going away, because the Astros arms were just burnt. They were just burnt, and they didn't need to be, but they did. They just kept bringing in the same exact guys, and not even like clutch situations. It was like, oh, we only have 3 relievers, and that's all we're going to use. And they never went to anybody else and gave them a chance. And by game 6, you could see like these quote unquote shutdown relief guys were no longer so shut down. They were just like burnt. So I felt like Dodgers series, I felt like throughout the playoffs, the manager should get more, props, because he didn't use, in my opinion, analytics to try to win baseball games. He used gut and thought, and was like, I don't care if there's like a GM with a computer up there. I'm going to go with what I see on the field. And I felt like the Dodgers and the Astros did not, and therefore the Braves were your champions.
Jon, you make a very, very good comment, because outpatience is almost, in my opinion, perfect way to say it. I was at the Dodger Braves game 5, when Chris Taylor hit those 3 home runs. And I was watching the Braves warm up, and they seemed tight. They were up 3-1 to the Dodgers last season, and then they lost 3 in a row. And they just came out almost like a baseball omen, tight. From the first pitch, they just felt, they looked tight. And I looked over at a couple of my buddies that I was with, and I said, these guys look tight. This is the Dodgers night. And Freddie Freeman hit that home run in the first inning. And I said, don't worry about it. It's only 2-0. Don't worry. And the Dodgers ended up beating them like 11-5 or something like that. But in game 6, they didn't look tight. They just looked patient. They looked relaxed. Everybody that they played in this playoff round, including the World Series, they were not the favorites. They were always, from a record standpoint, the underdogs. And so they even had to start the series in Houston. And like Ned said, they won 2 out of 3 in Houston. And so, Jon, that comment is spot on, I think. Do you agree, Jackson? They just looked patient and played patient ball.
I mean, you look at not even the pitching, but you look at the Dodgers putting people in position where they're not used to be, like Gavin Lux in center field, or the Houston Astros putting Alvarez in left. Like, I think a normal left fielder catches that home run ball. Like, I just feel like they were putting people in positions to not be successful, and the ball finds you. And then you put pitchers in position like Urias had never relieved all year, and all of a sudden you're like, no, we need this one. Oh, lefty, Urias, when you had a lefty reliever ready to roll. Like it just was like, I don't know. It was just, for me, it was like, wow, the Dodgers are really kind of outthinking themselves, and the Astros did likewise. And the Braves were just like, okay, we'll just keep playing baseball.
I completely agree with you. It was definitely panic. I saw a whole bunch of panic going into some plays that should have been no-brainers for the Dodgers with the Braves. And I'm just going, why are they panicking? They have this. This is like no-brainer baseball. Justin
Right.
Turner has done this a million times. Yeah, we don't have Muncy, we don't have this. Those honestly are, I don't like to use those as excuses as to why we lost. It's just we panicked, and the other team played better baseball, and that's just the nuts and bolts of it. So when I hear that, the Braves were, more patient, you're very correct. The Braves were much more patient than both teams combined. And I saw excellent baseball from the Braves. And to be honest with you, it was very satisfying to watch this World Series, because it was a great series. And I love baseball regardless who's playing. And it was an excellent series.
You even take a guy like Jorge Soler, who's your MVP of the World Series, and they're like, well, we go into Atlanta, you're not starting. Like, you're our hottest hitter. You don't get to start because we're not panicking. Like, maybe he'll come up in a pinch hit spot and hit a bomb. Oh, he did. Like, what if the Dodgers had saved their guy in a pinch hit spot? What if the Astros had saved Alvarez on the bench, or Tucker,
Or
or
what if
something
we
like that?
didn't have Scherzer close?
Yeah.
Would that have actually made a difference? And those are the kinds of decisions that, have people calling for Robert's head, when you're like, he has to make these decisions. It's not just, I don't know, but
Well, I know all those decisions are made before the game. That's the problem.
yeah,
So
exactly.
I'm going to add something to you, John. I'm going to turn it over to both the Westfalls here. So tell me, I like your idea of being patient, but let's add something to that a little bit, John, and tell me if I'm wrong, and I'm going to bring Jackson and Ned in this. To go deep in the playoffs, you have to have people rise up and unexpectedly rise up. And so last year, the Dodgers had Corey Seager, they had Mookie Betts on defense, they had a number, what's his name? Cody climbs the wall and takes that home run away. You have a bunch of different stars that rose up. The Braves this year, same thing. You had Albies rise up when he needed to. You had Soler rise up when he needed to. Let's not forget Tyler Maxson, right? Nobody can spell his last name, and nobody knows if it's spelled right on the back of his jersey. But, you had him rise up. You had Will Smith rise up. You had a number of guys come up. And, I mean, in the championship series, name the Brave that wasn't doing something. Freddie Freeman started out 0 for 7 and then just went on a tear. Right. And I mean, so Jackson, Ned, talk to me about those guys that rose up. Because John, wouldn't you agree that to go deep into a playoff, you have to have patience and you have to have somebody rise up? If we go back to when the Angels won the World Series.
Unexpected contributions, for sure. Every World Series, unexpected contributions. And the Braves at the trade deadline were like, yeah, we might be under 500, but we're going to give 4 outfielders a shot to give us unexpected contributions. And they did. They all did, all 4.
I mean, John, remember Adam Kennedy going yard 3 times against Minnesota, right? Who thinks that this little second baseman is going to go yard 3 times?
Yep.
I mean, unexpected contributions. And so Jackson, why don't you take us through that, and then I'll take it over to Ned.
I mean, first of all, I want to put some respect on Jorge Soler's name. He holds the franchise record for the Kansas City Royals for home runs in the season with 49. So, I mean, they knew the guy could hit.
Hats off.
Hats off to Jorge. That ball he hit in Game 6 was absolutely demolished.
Yeah,
that ball was long gone.
Yeah, but I heard it's still up in the air. It hasn't hit ground yet.
It's probably lost somewhere in a different galaxy at this point. When the guy makes contact with the ball and immediately turns towards the dugout, he got a hold of it.
Yeah.
But it was that mentality all year. The motto for the Braves this year has been battle. And I think they lived their motto. They battled every game. They weren't out of it until the last out. They fought, they made the right decisions, and it's the key contributors. Guys like Eddie Rosario, guys like Jock Peterson. It's utilizing what you have correctly, and I think that's the hallmark of a championship team. That's why you see the unexpected contributions. You see guys you've never heard of show up in a championship series or a World Series because the manager and the team knows when and how to use players like that.
Yeah.
And just for me, it felt like a special playoff run. Against the Dodgers, they get up on them, and it felt different this year than last year. I wasn't worried every single time they went to the bullpen because I knew, Luke Jackson, Tyler Matzek, and AJ Minter have a pretty good chance of getting to Will Smith, who looks great.
Yeah.
And when your team hits a home run in an elimination, like in a potential clinching game, Jorge Soler hit that home run, and I just felt, I'm like, this game's probably over. As weird as it sounds, a home run in the third, you could feel it. The team had the energy, the team was feeding off of it. Then when they tacked on 3 more runs, it was over. The Astros, like John said, they ran out of gas, just like the Dodgers, just like the Brewers. It's the patience. It was the grind. It was battle.
And I'm not saying this because John's on here, but the Braves reminded me a lot of the Angels when they made their playoff run and won the World Series. The Angels had a team that, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but they spent all season battling back. They were playing from behind all kinds of times. And wasn't it game 6 or game 5, game 6 in Anaheim, where they were down in like the 7th inning, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was the Moneyball year of the Oakland A's.
Mm-hmm.
And the Angels were kind of just riding those coattails. No one really talked about them, and they were winning almost at the same exact clip. They just won the wild card because the A's were so crazy on fire. But yeah, I mean, they were the underdogs in every series. The Yankees, Twins, Giants, down 5-0 in the 7th inning in elimination game 6 of the World Series. Dusty Baker, ironically, makes the wrong pitching changes. And, I think that was the last time he was in the World Series as well. And he went out and got the game ball, took his starter out, up 5-0, actually gave him the game ball on his way out and said, this is the game winning World Series ball. Keep it, and basically handed the Angels hope. And, Scott Spezio 3-run homer, Darren Erstadt homer, Troy Glass double, and Angels go on to win it. But yeah, the Braves were very similar, because I think you don't look at the Braves as anybody with like a high powered contract, like making $400 million, although maybe next year Freddie Freeman might, but they were a team built on that exact concept. Teamwork makes the dream work, right? And they didn't have any, they had Ronald Acuna, but when he went down, they didn't have like these, high powered, machines. The team revolves around Freddie Freeman, but he's not like this huge, like outspoken star that everybody, talks about. But they all just came together, and it was an amazing thing to watch, because when a team does that, you know that no matter what happens, they're gonna come back and win.
Yeah. It just, Jackson, there's so many similarities. When you said battle, it reminded me of that, because the Angels were a battle every year or every series. It felt like, I mean, there were series where they were down 5, 6, 7-0 and the late innings, 6th, 7th, 8th, and they'd come back and win it, and they have to go through the Bronx. Minnesota was great back then, taking out the Giants. Russ Ortiz, I wonder what Russ Ortiz ever did with that ball. John, have you ever thought about that? I wonder what he did with it. I mean,
I don't think he kept it, because that would be a very bad memory.
The ball that Steve Bartman caught, that they actually were able to get it back from Bartman at one point, and they exploded it at Wrigley. So I wonder if Russ Ortiz imploded the ball someplace. Anyways, Ned, I'm sorry we cut you out there. Talk to me about your turn on this. Patience, and also building or just fighting back.
Well, it's just, if you kind of watched, if you were to analyze the whole season for the Braves, you'd kind of look and see that they battled all the way up until, the second to last series of the season where they had to beat Philadelphia, at least 2 out of 3, and they ended up sweeping them for the division title. You got to remember they were under 500. They didn't get over 500 until after August. And so they were in the grind all year. That was a word Jackson didn't use, but it was each one of the players said it's just been a grind. It's been a grind. It's been a grind. But for me, it was and Jon touched on this a little bit already about just kind of the leadership in the dugout with Brian Snitker. That guy, he's got such a good pulse on his players. He's stuck with his players. They didn't even panic even during the season. I mean, a lot of the changes they had to make were based off of necessity, out of the injury or what have you. But it was a grind for all of them, and I think the experience last year in the LCS against the Dodgers actually helped these core players from a year ago. And just by bringing in these other quality, good major league players, I'm not going to call them great because they're not. They're good quality major league players. Soler and Jock Peterson and Adam Duvall and Eddie Rosario. If you would have told me that Eddie Rosario was going to be the MVP of the LCS, I would have said you're crazy. I mean, I didn't know a whole lot about the guy, but from what I could tell, he's a good major league hitter, and that's what you want. You want a guy that's going to go up there and hit. At least give a good quality at bat, and that's what he did against the Dodgers. The Dodgers just seemed couldn't get him out. So. There's always one guy in the postseason that always steps up and you say, oh, it's not going to be this guy. It should be our star, which in a lot of times it's not. And the thing that was interesting about the whole July, trade deadline is the Braves didn't go after pitching. They didn't because they knew they had it in their farm system. And, what speaks to that was, Kyle Wright's outing in game 4 of the World Series against Houston, right after, what was his name? Lee pitched only just like 4 batters. Kyle Wright came in and threw 4 scoreless. But anyway, nonetheless, they didn't go after pitching. They went after what they thought what was needed and best for the organization. And their season was like kind of very, very parallel with, their superstar Freddie Freeman. He started the season out slow, and so did the Braves, and once he picked up, they kind of wrote, but it was kind of the next man up. I mean, Henry and I watched so many games this year to where it was like, okay, next man up, and they just, baseball is a game of ebbs and flows and highs and lows, and pitching gets contagious and hitting gets contagious and that kind of thing. And that's really what we saw with this core. And they had a lot of guys there too that kind of stuck with it and kind of knew what their roles were going to be. And they went out and they performed there. This was probably one of the best team wins of the World Series that I've seen in my lifetime, but because everybody knew and understood their role. But I also too saw they got better and better throughout the year as well. If you were to watch them, I couldn't even tell you what their starting 9 was. I'm sure Jackson will pull that up on the opening day roster. How many were, Jackson, why don't you pull that up real quick, figure out who their opening day roster was.
Ladies and gentlemen, the statistician for Top Fan Rivalry, Jackson Westfall.
So, 4 or 5 of those guys, that started the World Series game probably weren't even on the roster, but it's just the biggest thing. It goes down to the leadership of the club. I mean, if you look in their dugout too, they've got 3 former managers that used to manage clubs. Walt Weiss used to manage the Rockies. You got Ron Washington that took Texas to the World Series against the Cardinals in the early 2010s. I mean, so you've got leadership in there that really, really kept these guys together too. And if you listen a lot to what, I'm a big Brian Snitker fan because he comes from the Bobby Cox tree of management. And if we really look and see, Snitker really managed that just like Bobby Cox would back in the 90s with the guys that he had. Back to Jon's point about not panicking, I think there was an inkling of bringing in Max Fried in game 5, to pitch on 3 days rest. But Jon is absolutely right. They looked at it and go, nah, this one's lost, but we trust him in game 6. And Snitker even said that after a post-game interview that, they wanted to stick to the plan, and the plan worked. But see, that's the thing too. Back to everybody's point about the whole panicking thing is that, if you stick to the plan is going to work. And, obviously the games can have you make a decision here or there. But, this also too was a postseason where Snicker pulled all the right buttons, pushed all the right buttons for guys that sent up there. I mean, if you were to dissect each one of the series against the Brewers, it was Jock Peterson. He hit 2 home runs against the same pitcher in 2 different games to win them games. In the in the LCS, it was putting Rosario at the top of the lineup. Eddie Rosario didn't hit leadoff all year until the LCS. After Acuna went down, the Braves struggled with, okay, who are we going to put in the leadoff spot? Is it Albies? Is it Swanson? Who's it going to be? So, that they found the right guy, at least in the LCS, and then in the World Series, it was like, he pushed the right button with sitting Soler in that was game 5? No, yeah, game 5, and Soler comes off the bench and hits that home run. So, it's really, really knowing and understanding that the field manager has a real good pulse of what his players can do. So, like I said, in the beginning, just as a fan, it's real gratifying to see. I wasn't screaming too much at the TV this postseason, to Jackson's point, like a couple of years ago, when it's like, what the heck are you doing, or what's going on here? It seemed like they were pushing all the right buttons, and the guys never panicked. So hats off to those guys. So, and I think just as a general baseball fan, you just like to see a good series. You just like to see a good series in general and see good baseball. And, you got to give the Astros credit for going out there and, trying their best, but, they weren't at full strength. I think if they would have had McCullers or, pitching 2 games in the World Series, I think maybe the results would have been different. Who knows? But I've always said that you guys still got to go out and play the game, and that's what it's all about. With baseball being such a big team sport, I think more than anything, everyone has to understand. Any other sport, they have to understand their roles and what their roles are, and they just went out and they did that.
So, Jackson, what was the starting lineup on opening day?
I mean, I couldn't pull up the line. I couldn't get to the box score, but I could tell you a couple of the players that were on their opening day roster, such as Christian Pache, who struggled at the major league level, Ender Inciarte, Marcelo Zuna, who's not playing for obvious reasons. But to me, looking at the bullpen makes me laugh, because they have relievers like Nate Jones, Sean Newcomb, Grant Dayton, Josh Tomlin. Like, can you imagine a team
yeah, Jackson, and I think you and I had talked about this a lot, and that was really kind of the difference with last year. Like last year against the Dodgers in the LCS, that Snicker was bringing in guys like that, Grant Dayton, and to pitch in some high leverage situations. Where this year Matzik really showed what he can do, and he was amazing in Game 6 against the Dodgers. That was really I think that was a turning point for Matzik in the whole postseason, was getting out of that second and third jam in the 7th inning after giving up a run and striking out 3 guys, and that's really what, rose his confidence into the World Series, really.
So
can
I just tell you that I hope Tyler Matzik never pitches against the Dodgers ever again? I mean, as a Dodger fan, what can you do?
Well, everybody knows the story of that guy, right? You got to feel for this guy. He's actually a local Southern California boy, went to Capistrano Valley High School and was drafted by the Rockies in the 1st round, and pitched for a couple of years and then suffered from the yips, and that's Steve Sachs had the yips too, those old Dodger fans that know that, but he just couldn't pitch, and then he was out of baseball, was pitching in an independent league, and then Walt Weiss comes over to the Braves organization and here's this kid, and he's like, oh, he pitched for me back for the Rockies in 2014 and 15, let's give this guy a look, and it's just been nails. I mean, what he just, I think guys that have stories like that, they're the ones that are going to succeed the best, because they've been through the hardship within their lives, and I think it transpires to their grit on the field.
Which is why it was so sad to see Muncy get injured and be out of the postseason, because I watched his career when he started with the A's, and I went to a couple of A's games where he was in the lineup, and he looked defeated, and he kind of like this sad puppy dog that really didn't belong anywhere. And so I see a totally different Max Muncy when I look at him as a Dodger. I see him as part of a family, and I think that is one of the things I love about both of these teams, is that they are very family oriented. You know, it has a good family dynamic. You know, you rally, they all rally around each other, where some teams I don't see that. I see very much individual, like, this is my time kind of thing. And honestly, I think that's what really destroys a team atmosphere, is that when you're playing for yourself and not for the whole team and your fans, and knowing that this is a family, you know, endeavor, that everyone's pulling for you, it's not just you, you kind of fail at it. And I think that's what we saw with the Astros, was that they failed at being a whole team, and they became individuals playing as a team. Does that make sense?
It does, very much so.
Yeah, yeah, but wouldn't you mark that as, you know, as the mark of a champion? I mean, I think the Braves saw that opportunity with the Dodgers. I think that series would have been totally different if the Dodgers did have a healthy Max Muncy and Kershaw pitches, and you know, but you know, the mark of a champion is you look at your opponent, you see what you're going up against, and you attack that, and you don't panic, like we've talked about before. And the Braves did that against the Dodgers. They didn't panic, and they put the Dodgers away. And it was the same thing with Houston. You know, the Braves, you know, they saw their opponent. They picked out they picked at their weaknesses, and were able to, you know, just outpitch and get timely hitting, and you know, shut down their top guys. And that's really what this is all about.
Oh yeah.
You know, when it comes to, so I think that's the mark of a champion. I think the Dodgers, you know, have done that over the past couple of years to stay, you know, up at top and be kind of a formidable opponent in the National League. And yeah, I know the Dodgers aren't going away, you know, and this is going to be a tough, what do I want to say? It's gonna be tough to defend, because, you know, the Dodgers are going to be coming after him next year. You know, the Phillies are going to try to retool, and you know, the Mets, and you know, everybody in the NL East is
Mets, the Brewers.
Yeah.
You know, they're all. We'll save that for another conversation. Maybe a spring training or something like that. But
no, but you're
you know,
completely correct. They had a great strategy. I almost said strategery. I apologize, being cheeky. But no, they had a great strategy. They saw the weaknesses. They pinpointed on those weaknesses. They elaborated and like totally attacked them. And yeah, had the Dodgers had like a completely healthy lineup the entire time, because we never really went through a full honest to God rotation throughout the entire season. So yeah, had we been a whole team the entire season and came at the Braves, we may be talking a different, you know, but this isn't horseshoes and hand grenades. We can't, you know, give the prize to the one that, you know, almost gets it, you know. And that's why I say kudos to the Braves. They found the weak spots and they got to it and they hit it hard, and awesome. Good for you. You know, you played that strategy, because baseball is a thinking man's game. It's not just who can hit the ball hardest or who can throw hardest. No, it's all about calculations and making sure you have your strategy down, making sure that you know what's going on out. You know, the shift, pitch count, as we often talk about. So yeah, no, good on the Braves. Yeah, I sucks that they beat my team, but yeah, good for you. I'm so glad that you beat the Astros. And you won the world championship. Awesome.
All right, so I'm going to give everybody 60 seconds to answer this next question as we depart. And this has been fantastic. I want to thank Jon and Ned and Jackson and Jamie for being on. But I'm going to give you 60 seconds. And Jon, I'm going to start with you. Okay, so Jon's the best when it comes to analyzing different things, and I always love going toe to toe with him on the analyzing the things. So here's what my question is: what do the Braves have to do to repeat? Jon, 60 seconds. Then Ned, we're going to go to you for 60. Jackson, you, and then Jamie, I'll let you finish. What do they need to do to repeat?
Well, I think it's proven every year that one player cannot win a championship, no matter how much the owners try to give these $300 million, $400 million contracts. The one player does not win games in baseball. It does in basketball. It does not in baseball. And team championships are won because they're a team and they're not overpaying their free agents. And the Angels are guilty of this for the last probably 10 years, ever since they started with Pujols, and the list goes on and on. You know, Josh Hamilton, Pujols, even Mike Trout, you could say, is overpaid, and they just can't. Like, if I were an Angels fan, which I am, I would look to trade Shohei Ohtani rather than pay him $300 to $400 million. You just can't do it. And they could have done that with Trout. They didn't learn their lesson, and I just don't think you win championships with 1 to 2 guys. So the Braves, in order to repeat, will have to look really strongly at Freddie Freeman and what is he requesting to versus what will you pay? Because I think the Braves proved you can fill voids with superstars go out. 2 All-Stars out. Acuna and Marcell Ozuna, and they fill their void with 4 mid-tier players and they win a championship. I don't know if they win a championship if those 2 guys don't get hurt or kicked out of the league or whatever, right? I don't know. If the Braves fans, you gotta ask that question, because they're not going to sign those 4 guys that helped them win a championship. So I would look at that and really strongly consider filling Freddie Freeman's void. Is it worth whatever the cost?
Love it. Ned,
I'm
60
gonna
seconds.
I'm going to answer that question, and yes, Freddie Freeman's worth it. He's a lifetime franchise guy. I think they'll do whatever they can to keep him in the organization. A couple of things that they'll need to do in the offseason is re-sign probably 2 out of the 4 guys. I think Jock Peterson walks, and I think Adam Duvall walks. I think they'll keep Rosario and Soler, especially if the DH is in play in next season. That's going to be dependent on the collective bargaining agreement that the players need to come up with. The other thing too is, don't break something that's working for you. So don't blow up your farm system. Don't blow up your coaching staff. And you got to remember that they won this World Series without Charlie Morton and without probably their best pitcher who was on the DL the whole season, Mike Soroka. He's coming back, and he's a tier 1 pitcher. So you could have 4 quality pitchers be in their rotation next year. So that's really what they have to do to repeat, and also to stay the course with how they did it this year. Don't get too high, don't get too low. Go out there and play 1 game at a time, and win today, and we'll play tomorrow.
Love it. Jackson, thank you.
Yeah, just give Freddie Freeman the whole city of Atlanta if you have to. You have to keep this guy. And one thing the Braves have really done well with their homegrown talent is they have Acuna and Albies on affordable contracts for the next 6 or 7 years coming up here. So it'll be really easy to front load maybe a very sizable contract to Freddie Freeman, because they have some wiggle room in their payroll that they saved at the trade deadline this year, just picking up some guys on some expiring contracts. I do think they have to re-sign at least a few of those outfielders. I do think Soler and Rosario are the most likely. Adam Duvall does have a mutual option, so if he wants to come back to Atlanta, I'm sure the Braves will take him, especially just for $7 million. A guy with his power and his RBI ability, some pretty good defense as well. Not bad to have, but yeah, just re-sign Freddie Freeman. I mean, keep the bullpen core intact. Wait for Soroka to come back. Wait for Acuna to come back, and then you have a arguably better team than they had this postseason. And they just got to wait for the young guys to develop.
And you've got the farm system to prove it. They've got 2 major league ready outfielders right now that aren't playing because of what happened with Drew Waters and Christian Pache. So they're in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, I was about to say that Drew Waters and Christian Pache most notably picked it up over the last month and a half in AAA. Really tearing the cover off the ball. So if he can figure out hitting major league pitching, he's an elite speed threat, elite defender. He just needs to be an above average hitter, and the Braves are pretty much set in the outfield for the next half decade or so with Acuna, Waters, and Pache.
I appreciate your boldness, and I hope that you saw John's reaction when you said back up the city of Atlanta, give him the city of Atlanta. John has suffered from the Mike Trout contract, the Josh Hamilton contract, the Tio Albert contract. You know, so when you said that, I'm like, good job, Jackson. Way to be bold. as John was sitting there going, oh no,
I mean,
we've been there.
I mean, the guy's awesome. Like you have to almost do it. I mean, he's the heart and soul of the team, just like Mike Trout is for the Angels. And I didn't blink when they gave him the contract because I knew they would. But it's just proven throughout the last 100 years, like Barry Bonds came close, but you can't win a championship overpaying your stars.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Barry Bonds was juicing, so we know why he won. So,
Yeah.
and that I was a Giants fan at that time, so you know, bear with me.
Yeah.
But
Jamie, what do you think? 60 seconds.
So 60 seconds. It's gonna be short and sweet. Honestly, I like how the team played. I think if they keep that patience going and they just play one game at a time, just remember that baseball isn't over until the very last out. And come with that mentality. I think you'll see this team go far next season. I don't think Friedman should get like everything because, to be honest with you, again, you should never build a team around one player. You should always, you know, diversify yourself. And to be honest with you, he was in such a slump at one point. I think he went like 0-9 at bats during the postseason, and then finally hit like a ground ball or something. I can't remember what it was, but I just remember hearing the commentator like, he's 0-9 in this entire postseason. I'm just like, wow, really? And you guys want to keep him? But hey, it's your team. You know, I'm not going to tell you how to do things. But, you know, honestly, I would really, really look at how he's been hitting throughout the entire year and not just base everything just on one of his abilities. So there we go. That's my 2 cents.
By the way,
So, go ahead, John.
So
What was that, John?
I just said we love Freddie Freeman in Southern California. He's a local kid.
Yeah, he is. My final thought here is my final thought here with this is that whatever you do, make sure your pitching is intact, because pitching is what's going to take you deep. You can always build a team around offense, but you got to have solid pitching. And you know, you saw the Dodgers suffer from it when pitchers went down this year. You know, no disrespect to John, but you see the Angels suffer from it every year because they don't have the pitching that they need to get the Braves pitching hit on all cylinders when it needed to be, both bullpen and starting. You see top tiered, you know, talent in Philadelphia, and they don't have the pitching. And so just you focus in on that one aspect of the game. And if you can build around 2 or 3 solid starting pitchers and a great bullpen, ask Arizona how that worked, right? They took out the Yankees on 2 solid pitchers in Kurt Schilling and Randy Johnson. And so just guys, keep you pitching together and you're good to go, right? And we'll see you in the ALCS again. John, that's played in October, so feel free if you want to come over to my house to see that.
Like I said, the next 60 game season, we will win half a ring as well as the Dodgers.
Ladies and gentlemen at Top Fan, thanks for watching this. Subscribe to it. This is great. I love having John on. I love these guys. And Jamie's one of our Top Fan contributors. She contributes a lot. Jackson's written, John's written. So we appreciate you being on tonight, and enjoy.